Hello, hello. Thank you for joining us. This is my friend, Mara Liz Meinhofer. She is a CPA, has an MBA in finance, and has been in business, finance, and accounting for over 18 years. After managing accumulated budgets of $1 billion throughout her career, Mara switched gears and started teaching others how to manage their money wisely. Twice in her life, unexpected crises have knocked on Mara's door. The first time she was only 29 years old, but both the times Mara came back bouncing and resilient to be resilient because she had no debt and had more than 6 figures saved. Mara dedicates her life to teaching others how to become resilient and bounce back from crisis by means of managing their money wisely. Who doesn't need that information, people? Welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your knowledge with us, Mara. How are you doing today?
I am thrilled, excited. I am so happy to be here. Looking forward to share my story and support the community.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, we're so looking forward to this. So I love being relatable. I love having people know more about you. So tell us something interesting about your life.
Well, it's interesting. How do we define interesting, right? Something I'm really proud of. It's quite geeky, not as fun. It's just I started reading when I was 3 years old, and I've never stopped. And it's my ultimate life. Yeah.
3 years old?
3 years old. I know. I was only 3 years old, and they took me a little bit like the puppet everywhere reading because it was so unusual, but I loved it. Yes.
Yeah, that's amazing. Geeky or not, like that's incredible.
Yeah, and books are a breadth of knowledge, so it's something that I'm really passionate about. Yeah.
Absolutely. I love that. That's so cool. So tell us about a significant time in your life that fear held you back from living your life fully.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Oh, yep, you're there. Good.
Okay. So, well, these moments define our lives, right? And yeah, and I believe the way that we handle them makes a big difference. So, in particular, one moment that it was quite recent that defined my life and changed the course. No, it didn't define my life. It changed the course of my life and how I chose to handle myself.
Yeah.
Yes, it was in March 2017, and I, out of the blue, out of nowhere, I discovered that the person that I love, the person that I was in a relationship with, he had been cheating with an escort. And it's something that had been going on for months, completely unexpected, out of the blue. And it shattered my world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So this was in March of, did you say 17?
Yeah, 17.
Okay, cool. So this was your life partner, and it was with an escort.
I know. Yes, I sometimes I like making jokes out of odd situations just to make it lighter, and
Right.
It's a little bit of, I call it like a tragic comedy. I try to put labels to help me handle it, and I remember when I think I was 17 years old, and it came out in the news. I don't know if you remember, Rebecca, but it came in the news that beautiful, handsome Hugh Grant, he was cheating on Elizabeth Hurley with a prostitute.
Yes.
You remember
I do
that?
remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember I was in shock. I was like, how can this even happen? He's so handsome and she's so beautiful. And it really, it made an impression on me. I was only 17 years old. And then, in 2017, I was like, is this a joke? It's happening to me. And I thought this only happened in movies. And it was just, yeah, I haven't heard of anyone else. I'm sure it's happened to other women. But, and again, I don't let that define me. It's just that it's been, let's say, like the lowest blow that I've had so far in my life. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And exactly. That's that's not on you. That's on him. Like, obviously, obviously he has issues of his own to work out on A, the escort part of it, and B, losing out on someone amazing that I'm sure he regrets that happening. So were you guys married?
No, we were not
Okay.
married. It was a serious, committed relationship, and it was someone that I truly, deeply loved. Yeah.
Right. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
I only asked to make sure, like, are you divorced now? That kind of thing. So, okay. So when the fear of all of that stuff, so what kind of fear is surrounded that? I mean, were you living together?
Yes, we were living together, and wow, even talking about it, even though thank God I've healed, it's still a bit triggering, right? So that's why sometimes I may pause a little bit, because telling the story is a little bit like reliving it again.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So, but you know what? In the moment it happened, I decided not to make it about him and make it more about me. And the experience was so profound that I was even invited to do a TEDx talk.
Yes.
Talk, yes, about it, because one of the things that would happen would be, my friends and my people around, they would tell me, Mara, how were you able to overcome this in the way that you've been able to overcome it? Can you please share it with us? So I was invited to give a TED talk in for women related to transformation, and I spoke about it. And if anyone is interested to watch it, the name of the talk is How to Get Yourself Out of Crisis, and they can find it at howtogetyourselfoutofcrisis.com. And in that talk, I go full into the story and the different things that I did to overcome that.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Go check that out. Her story. She's amazing. She is very resilient, and go check out her TEDx talk for sure. I definitely watched it. So when the fear was holding you back with everything that was happening in 2017, because that's a huge, like you said, that's just a total shock. You think that, wow, that just won't happen to me. I love this man so much, like all of these things, and then it happens. And so when the fear was holding you down during those times, where were you mentally, and how did you feel about yourself at that point?
Yes, well, you know what? This is a great question, because in hindsight, as I look back at how I handled it, and I'm going to get a little bit into details, I found myself even thanking God that it happened to me, because I had this spiritual, emotional resources to be able to go through that experience, not make it worse for myself, not make it about him, and able to overcome that. And what I mean by that was that years before, it was years that I had been invested in my own self-growth and self-development. And I am by nature a very, very curious person. And I have always wanted to be the best version of myself. Particularly because in my very personal case, we're women, and I'm fiery and passionate, and I could have, in the past I was reactive and emotional. And I knew that, as I was becoming more of a woman, those were things that I needed to work with so that I could have the impact that I wanted to have through my work and in my relationships. So before all this happened, I had already worked really hard on strengthening my connection to God. I am a God girl. I believe in God, universe, spirit, regardless of the name. Everyone calls it different names. I do think there's one main source of power, and I held on to that source. And when that happened, I was extremely surprised, because remember I said I'm very passionate, and I would have thought if this would have happened like 5-10 years ago, that I would have gone crazy. I would have just gone after him and scream and kill him and maybe make a scene and just go like out of control. And none of that happened. The moment I realized, oh my God, like, what is this? I went to him and I spoke to him, and he confessed that was the truth. And I handled it with elegance and beauty and dignity and ease. And I didn't scream, and I got myself beautiful, and I acted with kindness for myself, right? And for the love I had for this person, right? Yep. And I was able to handle that fear, not from a place of emotion and reactivity, but from a place odd enough of peace and calmness. And that was as a result of all the work that I've been doing with myself over the years. Makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me because I don't know how you did it, but like, I love it. And it makes sense that you are the kind of person that is always looking to better themselves in that self-development because you learned to read at 3. Like, you've been growing like rapidly since you were 3. I mean, think about that. Even the books that you just start reading as a child, I mean, those are helping you grow individually. So it totally makes sense that you are the person that's like, I'm constantly growing. I've spent a lot of money growing for myself, personal growth, that kind of stuff. And you've been to Tony Robbins, like, that's 5 times, right? Like, if you don't think this woman believes in self-development, like, she's been to Tony Robbins 5 times, guys. Like, that's crazy. That's crazy amazing, I'll say. So it just totally makes sense. Everything you just said of who you are to the core. Like, I absolutely love that you handled it with such elegance and grace. Like, yeah, that's
yes. And you know,
that's amazing.
Yeah, and so today, you know, what I do today, you mentioned at the intro, is I help people become resilient and bounce back from crisis, supported by the fact that, you know, they're financially well. And let me tell you a little bit about that. Throughout all those years, you know, these things are expensive, you know, these Tony Robbins seminars and all these different things, you're investing in yourself, right? And these things, right? And these things cost money and they cost time and energy. It truly is an investment. So I positioned myself in a way in which I could invest in myself because that was important. And I knew that I needed money for that. So I've always been very wise and smart in the way that I manage my money. So then what happened is, in this particular experience, the moment it happened, I started losing track of the details because I try to erase things, you know, of my mind that are not that useful. But I think it happened in the morning that I discovered, and I went and I talked to him. And in the afternoon, I live in New York City, and this is my home. Welcome to my home. And then in the afternoon, I hopped on a plane and I went to see my best friend. She lives in Boston, and I spent time with her and her kids. I needed to be in a nurturing family environment, you know, with kids happy and dancing and innocent, and I didn't have to think about it, right? So I went to see her. Then I took a plane. I'm from Puerto Rico. I went home to my mother and to my father, and I spent a week with them. And then I took a plane again, and I went to Miami with my sister and one of my best friends. And I could do these things, you know, because I've always had money saved. I took about 6 months. Yeah, I took about 6 months off from work because I was so in shock that I was like, I need to deal with myself because I need to overcome this. And I was able, you know, to invest in therapy. Of course, I went to therapy, you know, and retreats and different things. And again, having that freedom of choice of, you know, life, I call it the expected, unexpected. Life is going to throw crisis at you. You know, in my case, it was, you know, the phase of a romantic relationship. It can be health related, someone that, you know, that you love, you can lose your job, and nothing is going to spare you from that, because I believe that those situations come into your life to show you and teach you something. And there is no money that can buy that. You cannot get yourself away from the lessons that life has for you, but you can position yourself in a way in which you don't make it worse for yourself, in a way in which you can help yourself. And one of those ways is having money.
Yeah, absolutely. And that just makes so much sense, because the number one stress I think people have is money. So adding on a crisis and then adding on the fact that you don't have money to then maybe do therapy, or, you know, shake the foundation of where the crisis happened, you know, and get out of that zone and go somewhere that brings you joy. And like you said, like hopping on a plane and going to do those things, like that is incredible that you were able to do that, and that your job. So do you have your own business, or were you working for someone that you had to take off time?
Yes. So at that time I was working on my business, but I could take a pause. You know, I could take a pause and I could focus on myself, because I realized you can only give to others when your tray is full, right?
Yes.
And even though it is my passion to serve and it's my passion to help others, that was the time to take care of myself. And yes, so I helped myself, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I mean, you're the number one person. We have to take care of ourselves, like you said, before we can give to anybody else. You cannot pour from an empty cup. That's not a thing. And self-care and all the self-worth, like knowing that you're worth more than that, like all those things just come into a huge play of everything that you're talking about. So again, thank you for sharing your story more about like what's been happening to you, because I know that there's women that can relate. And the fact that money is surrounding that, I think, is very important, because people don't like to talk about money. There's so much stigma around money and having it or not having it, and all those things. So I love that we're having an open conversation about how money, it really just gives you choices. And it doesn't buy you happiness, but it gives you the choice to do happier things than being stuck and to wallow in your self-pity or whatever it might be.
And just my example, there's many women, that sometimes even stay in relationships that are not healthy for them. Because they don't have the means to pay their own rent or, to support their children. So money it's very important that we bring that into the wellness conversation. Again, it's not the end, it's just a means to help you live a healthier life.
Yeah, absolutely. So when, I mean, obviously we know that relationship shifted and changed, but so when you were breaking free of all the fear that was happening in 2017, relationships and friendships sometimes shift and change. How did this happen for you?
You know what? I mean, of course, that relationship ended, and this is what I think, right? When it comes to relationships in general, and I have learned this over the years through painful situations like the one I just shared. And I think, the lesson for me was that the relationships that are sustainable and healthy for me are those in which we share values, right? Not just interests or passions, but values. And in that very particular case, this person and I, we were not sharing the same values. So I loved him. And through my process, I never lied to myself saying, do not love this person. I loved him, but the values were not shared. So I realized that is so fundamental that relationship is not going to work. And then on the flip side, what happened was that sometimes we don't realize it, but when we go through difficult situations, always something positive happens. And in my case, the battalion of people, of friends and family that came out to support me made the whole difference. So one relationship, I had to cut, that relationship, but then I was able to strengthen and validate and enjoy the beauty of all the relationships that were in my life at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. It just reminds me of weeding out a garden, taking out the bad, and so that the good things can grow, and those seeds that were planted can have the space to grow in a positive way. So yeah, absolutely. That just makes sense.
Yeah. And I think in the end, one of the reasons that I teach about money is I do think that the quality of our lives is measured by the quality of our relationships. And relationships are one of the things, not the top thing that I value the most. So I think it's very important to take the time and nurture our relationships, and also become mindful of those relationships that do not serve us. And by and with this, right, and what I mean is that it doesn't mean that you stop loving people or you're pointing fingers and they're bad and you're good. It's not about that. Is that we're meant to nurture each other. And yes, sometimes there's friction in relationships, and that's completely normal, right? And that's what makes us grow, and that helps us develop even more emotional intimacy with your friends, with your family, with your partner. But if at the time, sometimes there are situations and relationships that are just not aligned with your values, and it's time to move on, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I just want to bring back the fact too that like you also did the professional thing, not just going on vacations to go see people that were positive, which positive support is crucial. But the other thing that you said was that you absolutely went and had therapy. you did the professional part of it and went and actually sought a professional out to help you through those things too, which is another huge thing that I'm hearing from women as they share their stories on the vlog, is that that's a huge component that people, a lot of people probably discount that and say, well, I don't need that. Well, the women that I connect with that have amazing stories of how they were resilient and moved through these things, that is a key component to that people also put forth in doing that. So what advice would you give the viewers for overcoming fear, whatever their fears are?
Okay, so the advice that I would give, so fear comes in many shapes. And the first thing to understand is you're not alone. I find and I feel that sometimes in the social media world, all that is portrayed, or the most things that are portrayed, are the positive things. And there's a lot of suffering. And actually, there's a beautiful book that I'm going to mention here. I learned a lot with that book, and it's called A Woman's Worth. And it is by Marianne Williamson, which is a spiritual teacher. And she speaks about the journey of women through life. And one of the things that she shared that really touched me was, I don't remember the quote, but it was something like, more women cry in silence than we.
Did you just say Marianne Williamson?
Yes.
I swear to you, that is wrote on this piece of paper.
Really? What do you mean? Ah!
Someone just mentioned that name. You can't see it. And my handwriting is terrible, but Marianne Williamson, someone just told me this. Like, it is on this piece of paper, and I'm like, did you just say that? I looked at it right before we started recording. That's crazy.
I absolutely suggest, that our audience is woman. Go and check her out. She's a spiritual leader. And one of the things that I love about her, she's fiery and passionate, and she's kind, and she's wise, and she's sharp. She's about 65 years old. And again, in this book, it's a celebration to women, but not just a celebration. It's like, let's talk about what it means to be a woman. And it really touched me when she said that more women cry in silence than we're not even aware of. And she said, we cry for ourselves, for our children, for our partners, for our parents, for the world. And there is suffering out there. And if you have any kinds of fears, you're not alone. We're all in the same boat. It's just that not everyone talks about it. And there is help out there, right? So my recommendation is, first, grant yourself some grace, because it's part of the lessons, it's part of the journey. Second, and this was a hard one, acknowledge the fear. Don't try to hide it. Don't try to pretend that you're a superwoman and I can take care of this. Acknowledge it. I'm in pain. I feel shame. I'm embarrassed. Whatever it is, that negative emotion that you experience, recognize it and see it, because when you don't resist it, it just flows, and eventually with time it goes. And then the last component, which is what you mentioned, Rebecca, is find some help. Find some help. For me, therapy was key. There's experts out there. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. There's people with perspective and tools that can absolutely help you. And in my case, not only I used therapy during that time, I have stuck with it. It's beautiful to have an expert that can bring perspective and advice and wisdom into your life. And who wouldn't want that? And again, I'm able to do it, not just because I want it, but because I have the money to afford it, right? So that's why, again, my message is so important. Position yourself to win, help yourself, take care of yourself, grant yourself some grace, and save some money up so that you can use it for those crises or opportunity moments where you may need it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that, because as you said earlier too, is that we don't know when life happens. We don't know when the next thing is going to roll through. But we know it will be there. But when is it could be 20 years from now, it could be tomorrow. You just don't know. And being prepared for that, I think is very, very important. So I love that. So Mara, you're really good at like moving through your fears, and you've been working on personal development for so many years now that you're really good at moving forward and doing those things. So you're living fearlessly, and where do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
I see myself exactly where I'm at today, which is helping women and helping other people. And my gift, it's numbers and explaining things and connecting with people. I see myself the same place that I am today, which is sharing my story, supporting others, and inspiring them to take care of their finances so that they can jump at opportunities, and navigate crisis a little bit more comfortably.
I love it. I love it. So that's all great. So tell us where everyone can connect with you. Where's the best place to connect with you?
Yes, so my name is Mara Liz Meinhofer, Liz, and you will find me. My website is maralizmeinhofer.com, and Facebook, Instagram, those are the places where I hang out the most. So by all means, go there and check me out. You're going to learn about me, my programs, my life, my stories, and all the good stuff that I have available to help ladies just like you and me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love to give you an opportunity to leave with one last thing that you want to share with people before we close out the vlog. So one last message that you want to get out to people, go for it.
You can do it. You can do it. I do believe that when we go through tests and different life experiences, they're here to teach you something. And if you have them, right there in the palm of your hands, it's because you have all the tools to deal with it. So believe in yourself, grant yourself some grace, cry if you need to cry, and rest assured that you can go through it and you can rise above it.
Yes, I love that. I love that so much. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your knowledge and stories with us. Guys, by all means, go connect with Mara on any of her avenues of social media that she just mentioned to you. You want to get connected to her. And I wanted to say to remember to love yourself and to live fearlessly. Thanks, guys.
Ciao.